Chapter 30. The Breaking Seal. Wind howled across the plateau, dragging ribbons of snow over the wrecked ridge. Kira leaned into the gusts, one arm shielding her visor. The storm had changed color, no longer white, but faintly blue, pulsing in rhythm with something deep below the ice. Behind her, Nico staggered under the weight of his pack. 2 clicks, she said through the comm. McMurdo beacon, weak, but active. He lifted his head. Through the haze, lights flickered in the distance. Not steady. Breathing. Looks like it's alive again, he muttered. Kira didn't answer. She kept walking. The station lay half-buried, snow welded to its flanks, antenna bent into a bow. The outer door was jammed half open, edges fused by heat. Kira forced the manual lever. It gave with a groan. A wall of warm, metallic air met them. Inside, the corridors sweated condensation. The hum was louder now, steady. 3 beats, pause, repeat. The pulse ran through the floor like a heartbeat. Movement ahead. Volkov stepped from the inner lock, helmet off, eyes rimmed red. Get in! Close it! Kira froze. Volkov, what happened here? Get in first. Where's Ro and Cass? Move! Volkov's voice cracked. Kira dragged Nico through. Volkov slammed the switch. The hatch sealed, muting the storm. Ro sat on the floor, rifle across his knees, blank-eyed. Cass huddled beside a heater, arm bandaged, trembling. Smoke hung in the air. Kira looked from one to the other. You sealed it? Volkov's answer was flat. For now. Nico's gaze flicked to the trembling walls. Then why do I still feel it? Because it's not outside anymore, Volkov said. Kira's voice lowered. You think it got in? Volkov shook her head. I think it never left. Cass's voice cracked. What does that mean? It's alive. The base? Ro looked up slowly. It's learning. Same rhythm, same pulse. Nico pressed a hand to the wall. The vibration thudded through his glove. Feels like it's breathing. Kira's jaw tightened. Then we move fast. We find what's making that sound and kill it before it finishes waking. No one argued. The hums swallowed the silence. They gathered in the command room around the central console. Screens stuttered with static, seismic data, dark corridors, dripping pipes, flashes of light. Kira laid the echo data core on the table. Identical pulses under the ridge. It's spreading north. Volkov rubbed her temples. It's inside the grid now. Mimics, copies, our voices, our faces. They learn every time we fight. Cass whispered. They're remembering us. Ro's reply was hard. Then we stopped teaching. A tremor rippled through the deck, dust raining from the ceiling. A new pattern appeared on screen, 5 heat blooms across the continent, pulsing in sync. Other stations, Nico said. It's jumping the crust line. Another feed came alive, a northern outpost. 2 technicians before a glass wall, light blazing behind them. One turned toward the camera, mouth open. Then the image burned white. Static. Every comm channel lit at once. A layered voice filled the room. Access Level 1. Granted. 3 beats, pause, repeat. Cass slapped the console off. The voice continued, through intercoms, through suit comms, even through dead speakers. Volkov cut main power. 2 seconds of silence. Then the voice returned, softer, inside the metal itself. Volkov's tone hardened. We can't contain this. We blow the site. Ro was already moving. Charges are in the armory. Kira turned on her. Destroy it, and the data's gone. It's not data anymore, Volkov said. It's alive. Cass pointed to the monitors. Even if we blow it, it's already out. Tiny echoes rippled beneath the sea shelf. Volkov stared. Then we buy time. The deck lurched. Bolts on the lower hatch clanged in sequence, one, then another. Cameras showed the corridor glowing white, steam venting upward, metal bulging. It's pushing through, Ro shouted. Volkov hit containment override. Nothing. A bolt snapped free, screaming across the room. A deep tone rolled through the structure. The station began to breathe. Out, Volkov yelled. Top level, move! They ran through flickering corridors. Walls dripped with condensation that glowed from within. Light moving inside the water. The air tasted of ozone and salt. At the upper deck, Kira looked back through the viewport. Under the ice, faint arcs of light spread outward, like veins. North, east, west, racing beneath the surface faster than any current. It's transmitting, she whispered. Volkov joined her. No, it's multiplying.
Outside, the storm had gone still. Snow lifted in spirals from the ground as if pulled upward. The aurora over the horizon shifted from green to white, spreading in slow waves across the sky. Ro planted the detonator. Charge is set. 30 seconds. The hum grew into a single note, climbing until it was beyond hearing. Kira stared to the viewport. It's not stopping. Cass's voice came small. It's calling the rest. The floor dropped. The sealed hatch below exploded upward in a geyser of steam and light. For one blinding instant, the whole station glowed from within. Every cable, every pipe, every pane of glass turned to white fire. Then the blast threw them to the floor. When Kira opened her eyes, alarms wailed and snow drifted through a crack in the ceiling. The aurora outside had gone pure white, the light pulsing in 3 slow beats. Volkov dragged herself upright, coughing. This isn't a breach. It's a transmission. Nico looked up through the shattered viewport. The sky itself seemed to shimmer, threads of light arcing outward, vanishing over the horizon. Kira whispered, "Then the world just heard it." Chapter 31. The White Sky. Kira crouched beside the main console, its frame warped, glass webbed with fractures. Each breath left frost inside her visor. A light flickered overhead. Another went dark. Nico worked beside her, tools spread in the slush, prying open a panel that had frozen shut. A screw sheared, a small final snap. Volkov moved between fallen beams, her boots breaking a thin crust of ice with every step. A conduit dropped from the ceiling and rolled, trailing sparks before the dark swallowed them. Rose stood watch near the hole in the wall where the antenna mast had punched through, rifle held low. Cold air hissed in, scattering paper and ash. Kaz lay under a torn thermal sheet, her bandaged arm trembling, breath fogging the air like smoke. Somewhere behind the bulkhead, a relay clicked once, then failed to start again. From deep in the structure,
A long, metallic groan rose through the floor, slow, exhausted, as if the base itself had finally begun to sink. Kira steadied herself against the console. "All right," she said, voiced hoarse through the mask. "Start from the top. What did we actually send?" Nico scraped a glove across the frozen keys, then smacked the side of the panel until it coughed a thin spark. The screen blinked, went black, blinked again, half stayed dark, the other bleeding pale light through cracks. He exhaled, breath steaming. "Not language," he said. "A rhythm. It latches onto anything that still moves. Clocks, heart monitors, comm loops. Once it syncs, it owns the timing." He looked up, face lit by the blue flicker. "It doesn't send a signal. It becomes one. Every system that's still breathing is keeping time for it now." Kaz let out a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "What does that even mean?" Then she shook her head. "Never mind. Something bad, I know." Nico looked up from the console, the flicker painting sharp lines across his face. "It means we syncing with whatever the hell's under us. Same thing that was at Echo." She frowned, not getting it. "There are two rhythms now, ours and its, and once they line up, it's the stronger one that keeps the beat. Think of it like a heartbeat, Kaz. Once you fall into its rhythm, you stop hearing your own." Volkov brushed snow off a melted console and pressed a gloved hand to the metal. "It used the crust itself," she murmured. "Not air. The whole planet carried the pulse." Rose's jaw tightened. So, whoever's left could be hearing it right now. Or already part of it. A thin sheet of snow drifted from the broken roof and dusted the dark screens. No one brushed it away. The faint hum beneath their boots kept time for all of them. Harrow 4. Kira leaned over the map. Any sign of life? Wind clawed through the gaps in the roof, scattering snow until it hissed against exposed wiring. She pulled her hood tighter, but the cold still found her neck. The console spat another burst of static and went dark. Nico slammed his glove against the frame. "Come on," he muttered, half to the machine, half to himself. The panel flickered again, dim, stubborn light crawling through frost. "That's it," Kira said, leaning closer. "Keep it alive." The hum deepened, almost a growl. Every few seconds, the lights gutted, the bass breathing in and out around them. Volkov knelt beside a half-buried relay and brushed away ice until her fingertips struck metal. She hooked a cable to her pack's battery. The connection snapped once, twice, then held. A faint image rippled across the cracked main display, a blur of grey, then black, then motion. Nico exhaled in disbelief. "It's pulling something. Feed relay still tied to Harrow 4. Kaz stirred under her blanket. "That coastal station?" "Yeah." Nico adjusted the signal with trembling hands. "It's buried, but there's a trace." The picture stuttered, a dome half collapsed under snow, its windows filmed with ice. Through the static, light flashed, faint, irregular, almost like blinking. Then a voice broke through, thin as paper. "Harrow 4. Containment breach. Still alive." The words folded back, reversed, then repeated. Volkov pressed closer. "Looping," she said, "but the timestamp's current." Nico shook his head. "That can't be right. Nothing should be transmitting now." Rose stepped forward, watching the broken figures on the screen, two shapes behind glass, blurred and overexposed, caught mid-motion. "If they're human," he said, "they've been calling for help since the flash." Kira's breath fogged the inside of her visor. The sound of the wind faded behind the pulse running through the floor. She forced her voice steady. If they're real, they'll see what we do next. If they're not. She stopped, eyes on the broken screen. We'll find out how fast it learns. A section of the roof gave a slow, exhausted crack. Snow poured through the opening and dusted the console, half burying the controls again. Nico brushed it away, trying to keep the image alive. The static clung to shapes that shouldn't exist. For a moment, against all logic, the feed held. Then the light failed, and the ruin went silent except for the wind. No one spoke. For a long second, the command room held its breath. Then Kira closed her jaw and said flat, "Okay, first things first. Something's moving in the sublevels. What are our options?" Nico gave a dry laugh. "Something? Try an army of aliens. Understatement of the year." She rubbed her forehead, ignoring him. "Gas didn't work at Echo," she said. "We tried it in Annex 4B, the test that froze the valves. It was meant to sedate. Instead, it stirred. Pressure dropped. Lights went out one by one." Nico nodded. "They seemed to learn chemistry. You change the mix, they change themselves, and we've already seen them shift shape." Ro turned the wrench in his hand. "So what actually hurts them?" "We can't really know," Nico said with a shrug. Ro frowned. "Weapons killed them," he thought, "just not fast enough, and there were too many." "Heat," Kira said. The word sat heavily. "Flares stalled one," Ro said. "A thermal charge glassed another. We scale it up." Volkov studied the schematic. "You mean fire?" "Yes. A ring of it. Force them toward the ship, then hit the hull." Nico's voice sharpened. "I can chain a thermal cascade, crawler fuel, welders, plasma cutters. Timed sequence. If the ceiling holds, it'll carve a corridor." Kaz stirred. "And if it doesn't?" "Then we bury it," Ro said. "Hold on. If the ceiling doesn't hold, we're going to be buried too. How can we make sure that doesn't happen?" "We'll stage it. Stagger ignitions, remote triggers, and a manual abort if sensors spike. Also tethers and a secondary exit. If the ceiling goes, we don't bury ourselves with it." A deep rumble rolled through the shaft. Tools rattled from a rack. A pipe snapped free, smashing into the comm stack in a burst of sparks. Thunder cracked overhead, rain hissing down the outer shell, an impossible sound in Antarctica. A ceiling panel tore loose and slammed down beside Kaz's cot. She flinched. Dust coated her blanket. Kira didn't move. She felt the pulse again, not through the floor, but inside her ribs, her heartbeat keeping time with the thing below. A hot metal taste filled her mouth. "They started this," she said. "We end it." Volkov met her gaze. After a long pause, she nodded. "All right, we burn it. We learn while we burn." Ro straightened. "I'll prepare the charges. Nico, rig the triggers." Nico was already digging through crates. "2 heavy suits still work. We strip the crawler for tanks. 30 minutes for the first ring." He looked up. "We can isolate the vents, shut the intake dampers, cut the recirculation loop, and purge the airstream. Seal the zone and force the heat where we want it. The plan." The lights dimmed again, then steadied at half power. It wasn't much, but enough to see their breath turning to frost between words. Kira pushed herself up and scanned the room. "We've got one shot before they move again. Nico, you and Ro prep the corridor. Volkov, you stay with me. We'll handle containment." Ro pulled open storage crates, frost snapping off the lids. Inside, everything looked half dead. Tanks with dented seals, cables coiled in rust, a welder that stuttered when he tested the ignition. "Everything's frozen solid," he said. "Then thaw it."
Kira said. Nico found the heavy suits in a locker by the wall. The fabric was stiff with salt and ash, and one visor was cracked through. He patched it with sealant while the other ran a diagnostic on the compressor. The system hummed once, coughed, then gave a weak green pulse. "Still breathing," he said, almost in disbelief. Volkov spread a schematic across the floor, pinning it down with wrenches. Her gloves left wet prints on the paper. "We'll need 4 ignition points, east, west, vent shaft and the crawler bay. If any one fails, the heat won't cycle." "Then none of it will hold," Kira said. Nico snorted. "Can't have that." Outside, the wind screamed against the shell. Snow whispered down through open beams like falling dust. Every sound felt amplified, each one waiting for the next to stop. Cass stirred under the blanket. "You'll be sealing yourselves in." Kira turned toward her. "That's the point." Silence settled. Then Nico said, 30 minutes, maybe 40 if the welders hold." 30, Kira said. "If it's not done by then, we're already too late." She traced a line on the schematic, a circle around the lowest deck where the pulse readings ran hottest. The ink bled under her glove. "Here," she said. "We light it here." A groan echoed through the metal under their feet, deep and deliberate, like something shifting its weight. Dust fell from the rafters, fine as breath. Ro looked up. "It's listening." Kira didn't answer. She rolled the schematic, slipped it into her pack, and stood. "Then we make it hear us." She glanced at the Hero 4 feed, still pulsing on the monitor. A drone sitting half a click out on the ridge, its lens streaked with ice. Beyond it, the flare line burned faintly against the snow. Lightning flared white across the clouds. The base groaned like an animal under ice. The crew moved through the failing corridors, collecting fuel cells and flares. The crack of settling metal followed every sound. The rope that once tethered them to the world above felt thin as a pulse line, stretched between them, Hero 4's echo, and the shifting dark below. They began to build the fire.
Chapter 32. The Fire Corridor. They worked in the red half-light, moving like ghosts through a station that no longer belonged to them. Nico had split the gear into neat piles: plasma cutters, welding cells, lengths of hose, a salvaged fuel manifold from the crawler, coils of det cord already taped into loops. Ro checked clamps and couplers with a soldier's economy. Volkov tagged the ignition points on a flickering schematic. Kira moved between them, a quiet gravity keeping their orbits from flying apart. Rain still hissed across the dome above. The white aurora pulsed 3 slow beats, each one finding a seam in the metal underfoot. Time was running out. "Last call," Kira said. "We do this now or not at all?" Rose flung the first satchel. "Now." Nico snapped the manifold shut. "Cascade is sequenced. It'll step down the galleries in 6 pulses, 30 meters apart. We light one, the rest follow." Volkov's eyes stayed on the screen. Harrow 4's feed shimmered in a small inset. The same snowberry dome, the same broken voice looping like a metronome of dread. "Tarit Harrow 4. Containment. Still alive." It folded back on itself and became the pulse. Volkov leaned closer. For a breath, the static parted and another fragment slipped through, thinner as if torn from somewhere distant. Don't let it through. Then it was gone. Glitch, Nico muttered, though the word sounded more like a failed prayer. Kira pulled on her helmet. Cass, you have us? I've got you, Cass said, voice thin on the channel. Command room's holding. If I lose you, I'll assume you're moving. If I don't hear in 20, I start fallback protocols. Copy. Kira hesitated. Breathe slow. Don't stand under anything that looks like it wants to fall. Everything looks like it wants to fall, Cass said, trying for a smile in the sound. Bring me back something to make sense of. Kira clicked off and looked at the others. Masks tight. No heroics. We light the ring. We keep moving. If it separates us, we keep moving. They filed into the freight shaft. The lift had died an hour ago. The ladder was hot to the touch. They climbed anyway. Boots ringing on rungs, air tasting of coins. The lower levels breathed at them, damp and electric. Condensation streamed down the walls like sweat. Somewhere, a faint alarm pulsed on and off, a small animal testing its voice. At the mid-landing, Nico dropped to one knee and fitted the first ignition head into a corroded junction box. He worked fast, hands steady, despite the tremor in the metal. Ro flipped open a flare gun, checked the load, and snapped it shut. You call it. Light it, Kira said. Nico thumbed the primer. Fire bloomed. It came like a breathtaking sight. The first lines searing along the gallery, white core wrapped in orange skin, eating pooled fuel and weathered insulation. Heat rolled back at them like a wave. Farther down, the second ignition winked to life, then the third. The cascade ran in a curve, a ring catching and catching, a throat clearing to roar. The station shuddered. Vents coughed flame. The hum under their boots pitched up half a tone and held. Go, Rose said. They moved into the corridor, shoulder to the wall, visors flaring with the light. The world narrowed to heat and thunder. The fire sucked oxygen and exhaled black smoke. The emergency fans woke, coughed, died, woke again. Every opening breathed. Reading spike, Volkov said, falling in beside Kira with her sensors slung like a satchel. Temperature rising faster than projected. The grid is picking it up. Meaning? Ro asked without looking back. Meaning, it's listening, probably trying to adapt. The first shapeshifter came out of the light half-formed. It crawled from a grate as a smear of glass and gathered itself into legs, a head, and a chest with no face. Heat made its edges boil. Threads sloughed off and crawled back on, writhing like a school of fish. It raised an arm that wasn't an arm. Ro didn't wait. He fired the flare. Magnesium hit the center mass and burst into a sun. The shape convulsed, came apart in slices of molten mirror, each piece still trying to move. Heat drove it to a liquid. The liquid bubbled and went dull. Keep left, Kira said, voice even. Don't let them flank. Another figure slid out of the wall ahead, almost human, shaped like Rose. Same stance, same height, even the faint burn scar across his chest plate. But its edges rippled like oil on water. Kira fired twice. The bolts punched clean through, leaving holes that sealed as she watched, the surface knitting with a shimmer. It's not solid, Nico snapped. He tore open a valve and flooded the floor with fuel, the reek of ethanol cutting through the smoke. The figure kept walking. For a moment, no one moved. "That's impossible," Nico whispered. Volkov's breath caught. "They're not imitating anymore. They're phasing. They've learned mass." Rowe raised his rifle, then lowered it. The click of the safety sounded absurdly small. "So nothing hurts them now?" Kira shook her head, eyes fixed on the thing advancing through the haze. "Something does. We just haven't found it yet." The figure stopped, head tilting in perfect sync with hers. The motion was precise, practiced, like a reflection remembering how to breathe. No one fired. "Back," Rowe warned. He sparked the line. The corridor went white. Flame ran along the fuel as if it had been waiting for permission. The mimic staggered, softened, then melted in a collapse that hissed against the plates. "Flashover," Volkov murmured, watching her readings climb. "And they're responding." "We've got company," Rowe said. They did. Shapes formed in the seams of heat and shadow, some dripping, some already wearing faces. One of them had hers. It looked up through the shimmer, her own mouth opening on nothing. Kira drew the taser. They hadn't adapted to that yet, or so she hoped. She fired. The thing shattered as a mirror dropped from a height. A tremor rolled through the passage. The ceiling warped and dropped a beam into our path. It hit the floor with a sound like a bell in the wrong church. Rowe knelt, swore under his breath, then slid his hands beneath the metal and heaved. Muscles cabled in his neck. The lift lifted, stuttered, rose another inch. "Through," he grunted. "Now!" Kira shoved a small tank through the gap. Nico flattened, slid under, came up already turning wiring the next ignition head along the far wall. Volkov followed and braced a shoulder beside Rowe. Together they held long enough for Kira to wriggle through. Rowe let it drop. Sparks coughed up from the floor. "Status," Kira said. "Ring 3 lit," Nico reported. "Eyes on his manifold. 4 goes in 10 seconds. Pressure is high. Blow back if we stand in the wrong place." "Not sure there is a right place," Rowe said. "Then stand in the least wrong place," Kira answered, and they moved again. The fire had found its rhythm now, striking down the galleries in pulses, each bloom answering the last. Where the flames ran, they left behind a skin of char, glowing at the edges and drinking light in the middle. Heat found old grease, old dust, old sins of maintenance. Everything burned as it had always been waiting to. They reached a junction where the corridor dog-legged and dropped. The great beyond glowed like a stove ring. Nico popped a hat and dumped 2 welding cells into the crawl space. 3, he called. 2. The explosion punched the air from their lungs. Blue flame sprinted through the crawl and blew a door off its hinges 50 meters away. For an instant, the roar drowned everything, even the hum under the floor. When it cleared, the passage ahead was a snarl of heat shimmer and falling ash. "Clear enough," Kira said, and they pushed on, visors streaked, suits steaming from inside. Volkov had gone quiet, head tilted, sensor humming. "Listen." Kira listened. Under the roar, a new sound threaded through, a modulation that shouldn't have been sound at all. It rose and fell in step with the ignitions, tasting like tin at the back of her tongue. "What is it?" she asked. "Communication," Volkov whispered. "They're talking through temperature." Kira's chest tightened. "We keep moving." They did. The corridor bent and opened out, not onto the cavern floor, but onto a grated catwalk at its edge. A rusted balcony built for work lights that had never been hung. Heat pooled and climbed. The ring of fire had reached the far side and curled back on itself. Below, the cavern was an eye rimmed in flame. The ship waited in the pupil. It seemed closer because it was different now. Its skin was no longer an even black. Lines had woken under the glass, veins running bright and slow, answering the fire with their own light. Blue slid to white, then to a color Kira didn't have a name for. "It's reacting," she whispered. "No," Volkov breathed, unable to hide the awe. "It's waking." The hum pressed a hand against their chests, not just under the floor anymore. It lived in the air, a pressure you could lean on. Kira's heartbeat aligned with it without permission. She gripped the rail and felt the metal purr. "Row, left stair. We go down slow. Nico, watch pressure. Volkov." "I've got it," Volkov said, eyes locked on the ship. "Seismic, steady. Thermal. It's doing something to the flame." The ship exhaled. A low-frequency throb rolled out, heavy enough to warp the air. The ring fire guttered as if cupped by an invisible hand. Every flame leaned toward the vessel, held there for a second, then snapped upright. Heat lights flickered and steadied. "Meaning it can breathe?" Nico said. Kira opened her mouth to answer, but the ship opened its own. Not wide, not dramatic. A seam along the curve, an iris, a pupil, a wound, unfolding by degrees. Black glass curling back from blacker interior. Light bled out like molten glass under skin. The pulse inside the vessel came clear now, spoken into open air instead of through rock and wire. Cass's voice cracked across the channel. "Kira, copy. Kira." "Copy," Kira said, eyes fixed on the widening seam. "We have visual on the pulse," Cass said, words chopped by interference. "It just went global again." Heat gusted across the catwalk as if the ship had taken another breath. Flames along the far galleries guttered and died in a smooth, obedient wave, snuffed like candles by a practiced hand. Darkness pooled where the fire had been, thick as smoke. Rowe raised his rifle by reflex. "That's enough waking." "No shots," Kira said, mouth dry. The thing below had stolen the sound from the room and left only its pulse. Nico swallowed. "Then what do we teach it?" Kira didn't answer. She stepped to the rail, stared into the slow, bleeding light, and felt it answer in her bones, and knew the truth settling like ash in her throat. The fire didn't kill it. It showed it how to breathe.
Chapter 33. The Open Eye. When the roar finally died, it didn't leave silence. It left a hush full of things that were trying to be quiet. Heat sank off the metal in thin waves. Smoke hung in long, gray veils that barely moved. The catwalk ticked as it cooled. Below, the ring of scorched galleries gleamed like a dark halo around the vessel, and the vessel answered with its own light, blue passing into white. "Kaz," Kira said, voice rough inside the helmet. "Status." Static scratched back. Then Kaz, faintly. "I'm here. I couldn't see the sky anymore. It was just white. No stars." Kira looked up through the fractured viewport at the far end of the hall. The storm had bled away. The clouds glowed from beneath, as if the world were lit by something buried under the ice. The old Aurora's 3-beat had slowed and stretched. Under her gloves, the catwalk rail vibrated with it. It wasn't noise. It was a pulse. Nico leaned over the console they had dragged to the catwalk, visor blackened, breath fogging the plate with each exhale. He toggled a dead screen, then another, then a third that half woke and spilled a salvage of numbers. No active power left down here. Passive sensors only. If it wasn't already fried, it's singing along now. Volkov stood without speaking, her sensor unit cradled to her chest. She pressed its contact pad against the rail, then the wall, then the catwalk. Her face went still. "Everything's coherent," she said softly. "The beams, the bolts, the screws, the steel's resonating. It's not sound. The structure's remembering us." Ro's mouth bared without becoming a smile. "So the base is a diary now." "Not ours," Volkov said. They moved back through the corridor that had brought them there, where paint had blistered into bubbles and insulation hung like scorched seaweed. The floor had buckled. Kira's boots crunched over a drift of glittering dust that had once been a light fixture. A monitor, dead, long dead since Echo, gave a sullen, impossible twitch. Letters burned once across its surface and vanished. Status, optimal. Nico let out a sound that wanted to be a laugh but wasn't. "Yeah," he said. "Feels like it." Ro ran his glove across a wall and brought it away slick. Beneath the blistered paint, the skin was wrong, too smooth, too warm, as if the alloy underneath had learned to hold heat like flesh. He pressed again, and the wall gave by a fraction, then firmed, like muscle tensing under a touch. A seam had opened along the corridor where the heat had bitten deepest. The cut edge was not charred, but something like glass grown in layers. Kira could see striations, fine as fingerprints, winding up through the metal where none had existed before. "The ship's material has grown into the base," Volkov said. The hum rose half a tone and held. Kira felt it in the pocket behind her sternum, heard it in the spaces between the clicks and groans. She stopped, closed her eyes, and listened. "Harrow 4?" she asked. Nico pulled the small jury-rig display from his harness. He thumbed it on, and a square of bad television floated in the gray. The same dome stared back, the same interior wall of glass, the same two blurred faces, overexposed to white. They were caught in the half-frame of flinch. As he watched, the image jumped one frame. The faces turned toward him, toward them. He shut it off without saying why. No one asked. They descended toward the cavern. Metal under flits softened more the lower they went. The treads that had once been rigid gave way by a hair, and then rose again when their weight passed. Each footstep left a faint print of light that faded back to black in a breath. Kira breathed through her teeth and didn't look at the footprints behind them. The air grew cleaner without growing colder. The smoke thinned, the white blue inside the ship brightened in time with the faraway pulse. The smell shifted too, hot metal to wet metal, to something like oxygen with the edges filed off. They emerged on the lower platform where the catwalk met the cavern mouth, and the scale of the vessel was finally honest. It sat in the hollow, like the iris of an enormous eye, curved and patient, the eyelid around it seared black where their ring had burned. The iris itself was open now, a wound or a door, not wide, but wide enough to pull the light inward and breathe it out again. The glow spilling from within made its own weather. It lifted tiny ash flakes and dropped them again. It hid their breath. "Heat signature?" Kara asked. Nico lifted the scanner. The screen flickered, wrote symbols it didn't own, then went blank. No read. No depth either. The signal folded the data before the sensor could catch it. "Electromagnetic?" Ro asked. "Flat, like it's turned the air sideways." Volkov hovered at the lip of the platform, eyes narrowing, as if focus could make sense of the white. "There," she said, almost to herself. "The pulse frequency. It's at 65 now." "Is that good?" Ro asked. "It's human," Volkov said. "Resting rate. It's breathing our tempo." Kira heard it. She could not stop hearing it. Her chest answered. Her breath wanted to fall into step with the rise and fall. She changed her rhythm on purpose, and the pulse waited for her to return. "Ro," Kira said, because orders were the only thing keeping language steady. "You take point. Nico on your shoulder, Volkov with me. No contact unless I say.
If it moves, if the floor moves, we stop. Kaz? Static? Then still with you. Satellites are blind. The pulse is in the ground and the sea and the sky. If you go in, the line bowed. Her voice came back a fraction late, as if the cavern itself were repeating her. If you go in, you might not come back. We'll bring you something, Kara said, hoping she hadn't promised too much. They approached the opening. Up close, the hull was not smooth. It was a skin of interlocking plates so fine their edges blurred. Between them, capillaries of light pulsed in tiny delays, a river delta seen from too close. There were marks in the surface too, oval depressions like palms pressed into soft glass. Most were old, worn and shallow by whatever passed for weather in this place. A few were clean, edges wet with a shine that wasn't wetness. Kira lifted her hand without meaning to. She stopped a finger breadth away. Heat licked her knuckle through the glove. The plate beneath that almost touched breathed once. Don't, Volkov said. She wasn't sure if it was a warning or a plea. Something answered anyway. The pulse deepened, close enough to be felt as pressure against the skin. The light inside the opening quickened like a creature recognizing the noise you made when you came home. A faint wind drew inward over the rim, the tug of air that all doors made, scaled up to a throat the size of a house. Roe adjusted his grip on the rifle. You sure we want to go inside something that just learned how to exhale? No, Kara said, but we can't stop at the door. Vokal's eyes stayed on the light. Whatever's inside, she said, it's seen us since we lit the first spark. Nico looked down once into the dark where their footprints faded, and up once at the white where their reflections began to have their own opinions. Old-fashioned then, he said, trying for a joke. Cass's lace plate through, stretched thin on the wire. Kira, do you read? The sky. Static. Harrow. Static. Don't. The cavern repeated a version of breath later, wrong pitch, wrong shape, as if it had tried on the sound to see if it fit. Kara nodded once. Stay together, she said. Don't touch anything until it touches us. They stepped across the threshold, out of stone, and into something that was no longer the world. The instant they crossed, the air changed. Sound dulled as if someone had cupped their ears. The hum was no longer underfoot, but everywhere. In the helmets, the marrow, the soft meat behind the eyes. The light from their suits didn't fade. It was absorbed, swallowed into the surface ahead. There was no darkness to push back against, only a light with no place to land. The air thickened, carrying pressure and warmth that didn't belong underground. Their boots sunk by a fraction into a surface that wasn't floor or membrane or glass, then rose again, leaving no mark at all. It felt like walking on the inside of a lung, soft, living, patient. Kira felt the vessel's skin flex beneath her weight, a slow, deliberate acknowledgement. The suit tightened against her chest as if the ship itself were testing how she breathed. She looked back once. The opening behind them had shrunk to an oval of distant daylight, a mouth half open to the storm. Then even that thinned, and the threshold sealed with a long, low breath. The hum steadied. The ship had taken them in. Comms check? Nico said, and heard himself half a second later saying, Comms check? Thinner from somewhere ahead. He froze. The echo froze.
He breathed in, and the ship breathed with him once, like humor, like warning. Roe glanced back. The opening was still there, a perfect oval cut from light. The world outside looked like a photograph someone had forgotten to finish. He took one more step, because the only way to test a floor was to put your weight on it and see if it held. Kira sensed, rather than saw, Volkov tilt her head as if listening for a number that didn't exist. Something passed at the edge of sight, the way a thought passes before you can hold it.
She wanted to say wait. She wanted to say run. She said nothing. The light folded a little. The threshold tightened a little. The last sound from outside was Kaz sang their names, as if names could keep people whole. Then the ship closed its mouth to the weather, and the world went still. For the first time since the fire, the air felt alive.
Chapter 34. The Symmetry. The power had stabilized just enough for the lights to hum again. Cold air crept through the broken vents, carrying a smell of salt and ozone. Somewhere deeper in the vessel, water dripped at a steady, patient rhythm. Kira checked her gauge, oxygen holding, pressure stable. She lowered the visor lamp and swept the beam ahead. The walls weren't metal anymore. Not entirely. The plating had softened into something smoother, like alloy poured and half melted. Thin veins of light pulsed just under the surface, tracing patterns that shifted when she moved. When she touched the wall, warmth answered through the glove. "Feels alive," Nico muttered. "Everything down here does," Ro said. The deck sloped gently toward the ship's heart. The pattern beneath their boots looked welded first, then stitched, metal and fiber braided together, as if the structure had once been torn open and healed wrong. Condensation beaded on the seams. Every few steps, a pulse ran through the hole, soft as breath. Nico crouched beside what might have been a console. It was the size of a table, its surface black glass, veined with hairline cracks. He wiped a glove across it. The residue was slick, faintly warm. When he struck the edge, the surface rippled outward like water. Lines of light formed, rearranged, and steadied into static images. Static lines twitched across the surface. The noise sharpened into shapes. Corridors, scaffolding, walls that looked too human to belong here. Then the feed stabilized. The image staring back at them was McMurdo's command room, its roof half gone, its lights dead, their own footprints visible in the dust. Kara's stomach tightened. "That's us," she said. "No," Volkov whispered, leaning closer. "That's before." The footage twitched, then looped backward 3 seconds. The same flicker of snow, the same drifting shadow through the doorway, over and over, as if the ship were remembering them in real time. Somewhere behind the walls something moved, slow, deliberate, like a long exhale through stone. The pulse in the hole matched it a heartbeat later. Nico straightened, voice low. "It's not replaying," he said. Volkov leaned closer. "There." The bodies lay slumped near the control desks, still in their suits. The skin on their faces was drawn tight and pale, as paper stretched over bone. Their eyes had sunk deep. Their uniforms were stiff with frost, but not torn. Ro frowned. No wounds. No burn marks. Nico switched to thermal view. The screen went flat blue. No residual heat at all. "They didn't freeze," he said quietly. "They were dehydrated." Volkov tilted her head. "That much water loss isn't natural." "They were drained," he said. "Completely." Kira's throat tightened. "Into what?" No one answered. The silence inside the chamber was as heavy as the air. "Keep scanning," she said. Nico flipped through other feeds. Storage, medical, the west airlock. Everybody he found was the same. Tight skin, dry eyes, lips cracked and white. It looked less like death and more like something had pressed all the water out and left the rest behind. Volkov's voice was small. "They took it. All of it. The ship's been feeding." Kira turned away from the screen. "Then we shut it off." They moved down the corridor toward the data chamber, the one with the glass walls that shifted like water. The floor flexed faintly under their boots. Every few steps, droplets formed on the ceiling and fell with soft plinks. Inside the chamber, panels glowed with soft light. Beneath the glass, slow currents moved like tides. Nico connected his tablet again. "Satellite feeds are still syncing," he said. "Last complete set is from 12 days ago." Volkov watched the data load. Cross-compare with last year's survey. 2 global maps appeared side by side. The difference was immediate. The blue ice fields were thinner.
blotched with grey. The total polar mass reading blinked in red text. Volkov read it aloud. Down 14%. Rose stepped closer. That's impossible. No melt rate comes close to that. It isn't melting, Volkov said. It's being taken. Nigo overlaid a live radar pass. Fine blue lines radiated from under the McMurdo outward through the continental shelf. Subsurface channels, they're siphoning meltwater. To where? Rose shook his head. Nigo looked up at the ceiling, where faint mist drifted through the vents. Here. They all went quiet. Kira said, "Can we shut it down?" "Maybe," Nico said. "There's a control spine under the core. It draws power through localized conduits, like arteries. Then we cut them." He nodded. "If we hit them with an EMP pulse, it might collapse the current long enough to interrupt the flow." Volkov's eye stayed on the shifting glass. "You don't know what happens to the system when you do that." Rose said, "Don't care. We kill it before it drinks the rest." They descended into the core shaft. The air was humid, almost warm, carrying the scent of brine. The central column rose out of the floor, a vertical cyclone of clear liquid turning in slow motion. It breathed. Tubing in translucent filaments fed into it from every direction. Each line pulsed faintly, drawing water from the depths. Volkov raised her scanner. "This is the source. It's pulling from beneath the shelf." Nigo unpacked the EMP unit from his bag. "Crawler batteries, short burst coil, capacitor pack. It'll hit like a hammer, one-time use." Ro began setting small charges around the nodes on the floor. "Give me 10 seconds warning before you fire." Kira watched the column rotate. "What if this is the only thing keeping the planet stable right now?" Rose said, "Then it's the wrong kind of stable." Volkov touched the column with her glove. Images rippled across the glass walls. Green fields, rebuilt cities, rivers that ran like veins. "They're repairing," she said softly. "Balancing entropy. By killing everything that leaks out, including us." Nico called out, "Ready." Kira glanced once more at the images. Perfect symmetry, no decay. "Do it." The pulse detonated with a flat, concussive crack. All lights died for a half heartbeat, then surged back dimmer. The column jerked and went cloudy. The hum beneath their feet stopped. Steam hissed up through the vents, then faded. For a moment, there was only dripping. Volkov whispered. It stopped. Kira exhaled. "Good. Now we find out who else is still listening." They climbed back toward the surface. The base above was half dark, half lit by emergency strips. The wind outside had gone strangely calm. Nico worked at the comms terminal, 3 burn panels and a salvage transmitter rigged to one of the crawler cells. "The signal's weak," he said, "but enough for a short burst." "Send it," Kira said. "Anyone who can still receive." He typed quickly. A tone beeped once, then steadied. "Transmitting." The message was short, automated, wrapped in coordinates and identification codes from Echo Point. It went out on every channel, still breathing. Rose stood by the shattered window slit, watching the storm. "Don't think anyone's left to hear it." "Maybe," Kira said, "but we had to try." The wind pressed once against the wall and faded again. For the first time in days, no snow moved outside. Volkov straightened from the console. Transmission complete. Power reserve 23%. Nigo adjusted the receiver gain. "Hold on," he said, getting reflection pings. "From where?" Ro asked. "Multiple origins, ground-level echoes. Something's out there, moving fast." Kira joined him at the panel. The radar sweep showed faint shapes crawling across the grid. "Drones?" Nico shook his head. "Too big. Rotor-wash interference. Helicopters." That word hung in the air. Ro went to the window. The horizon was grey, blurred with haze. Then a sound began, a deep, even thudding, steady as a heartbeat. It grew until the walls themselves trembled. "Visual," Ro said. At first they were only shadows. Then the fog shifted and a dozen dark shapes came sliding through it. Low, fast, formation tight. Their rotors cut the air in perfect rhythm. 3 beats, pause, repeat. Nigo's voice cracked. "Same pattern as our transmission." Volkov stepped closer to the window. No markings, no lights, nothing. Kira stared out. Rescue? Ro shook his head. Rescue doesn't fly silent. The thudding grew until it filled the room. Frost shook from the ceiling and patted on the floor like sleet. The first helicopter dipped, angling straight toward the crater. Its hull gleamed dull black. No insignia, no flag. Transponders, Kira asked. Dark, Nico said. All of them. The first craft banked, and for a second, its underside flashed. Hard points under the fuselage. Weapons mounts. They're armed, Ro said. Volkov Wolfbad. Then who the hell are they? The radio hissed suddenly. A voice came through, flat, calm, almost mechanical. Echo Point Station. Message received. Hold position. Kira stepped to the console. Identify. Static. Volkov stared at the speaker. That's us. That's our message. Nico checked his log. It's bouncing back. 4 separate sources. The helicopters broke formation, spreading out over the plain. Snow whipped into spirals under their blades. The sound hit a physical pitch, more vibration than noise. Ro chambered around. Kira, orders. Kira kept her eyes on the window. The lead aircraft dropped altitude, rotor wash tearing the snow flat. Figures were visible in the cockpit, faces pale.
Eyes unreadable. Whoever they are, Kira said quietly. They heard us. The radio spoke once more, softened this time, as if repeating a memory. Hold position. The first helicopter's side hatch opened. Kira's visor darkened automatically against the glare from the lights. Positions, she said. Weapons ready. Ro moved to her flank. Volkov ducked behind the console. Nico's screen blinked once more, then died completely. Outside, the formation circled the base like a pack closing in. Kira watched the lead bird descend, rotors thundering in perfect sync. Her voice was steady. Stay down, she said. We're about to find out who answered. The noise swallowed her words. They'd been hearing them for 10 minutes already. Not the distant growl of storm, not the low animal sound of shifting ice, but a steady chopping thunder that came in waves across the white. Kira stood in the lee of McMurdo's broken gantry, visor tilted to the sky, watching the clouds bruise and thin in patches as the sound drew closer. Could still be it, Nico said quietly at her shoulder, the way it faked them before. Lang, floodlights, soldiers that moved like drills instead of men. The last time they'd heard helicopters, they'd watched a dead crewmate carried out through a door the logs pretended had never opened. I know, Kira said. The wind was wrong for an echo. It carried the rotor beat clean, punching through the murk in solid thumps she felt through her boots. Snow shivered off the wrecked antenna mast in fine streams. Cass shifted her weight, teeth clenched against her bandaged arm. If it's them again, we run. Where? Ro asked. He nodded toward the black glass cracks webbing the snowfield, seams of something not ice, faintly glowing from below. Down, or back to a base we already turned into a crater? Cass didn't answer. Her breath fogged her visor, thin and fast. Volkov checked the analog meter on her wrist. The seismic lines twitched, then steadied into a new pattern. Whatever's under us is reacting. It hears them too. The sound grew until it became a physical thing, pushing the air ahead of it. The clouds tore open, and the first helicopter punched through. It was wrong and right at the same time. Too bulky to be what Echo's feeds had shown. Armored, angular, the rotors chewed the air, downdraft kicking snow into spirals that struck their visors with real force. No flicker, no seam. More helicopters followed, lights strobing through the haze, painting the dead station in pulses. Triplets, Nico muttered. Kira's hand closed around the flare at her belt. We hold, Kira said. We don't wave, we don't run. We see who steps out. The lead helicopter dropped on the broken apron. Hot, oily wind slammed into them, reeking of fuel and metal. Real, her body insisted, even as her mind waited for the lie. The side door opened. Men spilled out in matte armor, faces hidden, movements tired and efficient. Not the smooth fakes from Echo's raid. These were human in the way exhaustion always is. A hand lifted, palm out. "Identify yourselves." Kira stepped forward, hands open. "Echo Point Station, Commander Kira North. This is my crew." A pause, then "North, copy." No surprise in the voice. That scared her more than disbelief would have. Another figure dropped down, slower, unmasked. Frost rimmed his hood, beard graying, eyes sharp. "Colonel Avery Shaw, Joint Response Task Force. You're a long way from the last satellite picture left you." Something in Kira's chest loosened. Coffee, wool, bad sleep. Human. As the world goes quiet and something down here screams loud enough to trip every dead listening post, people notice. Your transmission came with company. He gestured toward the dark veins around the dome. That lit up everything we have. We were airborne 4 hours ago. 4 hours, Nico said. We cut corners. A case was brought forward. Shaw opened it with care. A rugged tablet glowed inside. Volkov stepped closer. That's Hero's encoding. Hero 4 relay. 1 burst, 12 hours ago. The file pulsed. H4, last, priority. Kira swallowed. Play it. The audio was thin but human. "This is Dr. Samira Holt at Hero 4. We've confirmed non-atmospheric origin for the anomaly. It uses water as a carrier, ice, soil moisture, us. It learns structures, then replicates." Wind howled beneath her words. "We tried a localized EMP. It adapted, shifted mass outside our target envelope. If you're hearing this, you're behind it already." Cass' hands tightened. "We go to draw it under the shelf. If we can make it heavy enough, close enough to the waterline, maybe it drowns the way we do." A broken laugh. "If we fail, don't come here. Don't bring it anything to climb." The audio doubled. We. Shaw killed the playback. "That wasn't an echo," Volkov said. "It was it, talking through her." "Why come here?" Kira asked Shaw, "if you know what it does to infrastructure?" "Because your echo fire made it mobile, and because Hero's plan didn't work. We can't let it walk north." "With guns?" Nico asked. "Hydro reclamation tech, never finished. Turns out you can pull water out of more than cities." Beneath their boots, the hum deepened. Volkov's meter jumped. "It's moving." A crack split the snowfield 20 meters out, then another. The lines crossed. The ice burst. Something rose, slow, nauseating, a sheet of not ice, veins glowing pale, the air frosting around it. The nearest Marine froze mid-step as ice raced up his legs. "Fire!" Shaw shouted. A cleared jet struck the thing. The effect was immediate and brief. Light died where it hit. Steam tore free. The mass recoiled. "That's a hit," Nico said. Then the light rerouted. The dead patch sealed. The mass flowed. Ice climbed the Marine again before anyone could reach him. They dragged him free, but his legs came with him wrong, encased in something grown, not frozen. The thing pulled back, fracturing, reconfiguring. The hum underfoot deepened. "We're not stopping it," Volkov said. "We're irritating it." "We buy time," Shaw said. Cracks spread outward now, sketching a direction. Northeast. "Hero 4, Cass said. Kira looked at the wounded man, the reforming mass, the helicopters crouching on the ice. "You have lift?" Shaw asked. "Enough. After that, gravity does the rest." The engines spooled higher behind them. Ahead, the ice shifted, listening. "Last stand," Nico muttered. Rose squeezed Cass's uninjured shoulder. "Let's make it count." The cracks ahead closed into a single dark seam, pointing northeast. The storm followed.
Chapter 36. Convergence. The flight northeast was short, violent, and far too quiet. The helicopter skimmed low over the ice, engines throttled back to a muted profile, as if even the pilots were afraid of waking something beneath them. Shadows stretched ahead like black spears across the snow. Inside the cabin, breath misted in slow plumes. Nobody spoke. The wounded Marine lay strapped to a stretcher, legs encased in clear frost crystal that crackled softly whenever the aircraft banked. The ice was still creeping, millimetre by millimetre, despite the heat pack strapped to him. The medic watched it happen and said nothing. Cass sat between Ro and Nico, clutching her injured arm. Every shudder of the helicopter pulled a sharp breath from her. Ro pretended not to notice, though his hand hovered close enough that she could choose it if she wanted. She didn't. Not yet. Kira watched them all, helmet off, sweat freezing at her temples. Her mind ran through protocols on reflex, discarding each one. There was no manual for architecture that learned as you fought it. Shaw crouched near the open side door, listening through his earpiece. His posture wasn't command-ready, it was accounting, adjusting losses, waiting for the next variable. "Harrow shelf in 2 minutes," the pilot called. Volkov leaned toward the window, notebook trembling on her knee. "The seismic pattern isn't dispersing, it's tracking us." "Good," Shaw said. "We want it committed." "Not that committed," Nico muttered. The helicopter dipped, and the world fell away. Harrow 4, or what remained of it. The shelf looked hollowed from below, plates of ice tilted at wrong angles, cracks spiraling outward, glowing faintly with the same light they'd seen under McMurdo. "It didn't break this place," Volkov said. "It mapped it." The helicopters dropped into a sheltered wedge between towering slabs. Marines were already moving as the skids touched down, spreading into a tight perimeter. Weapons hummed. Cold knifed into Kira's lungs the moment her boots hit the ice. "Holt's coordinates are east, 2 clicks." "Her last stand," Nico said. Ro elbowed him hard. Nico shut up. The third helicopter settled behind them. The snow beneath it lifted, not from downdraft, but from below. Kira felt it before she saw it. She turned her head slightly. "Colonel." Shaw followed her gaze. His jaw tightened. "Hold positions." Silence pressed down, thick enough to hurt. Then the ice split. Darkness opened, threaded with light. Shapes rose, thin at first, then thickening, unfolding into structures that didn't repeat themselves twice. Kira didn't stare. She said only, "That's faster than McMurdo." "Line them up," Shaw snapped. Weapons came alive. The first contact was brutal and brief. Blasts tore holes through alien geometry, freezing and shattering sections of it, only for the light inside to reroute, edges hardening, movement sharpening. "They're learning," Volkov shouted. "Faster this time." The ice answered with screams. A Marine went down, frozen mid-step. Another was dragged free, missing more than armor. Fractures spread outward, each new crack another invitation. Ro leaned close to Kira. "We're not holding." "No," Kira said. "We're not supposed to." The ground shook again, deeper this time. Volkov's pencil snapped. "That's not the core. It's a pathway. It's leading mass toward the waterline." "Exactly what Holt tried," Nico said. Kira looked back to Shaw. "If it commits here, the shelf won't carry it." Shaw didn't hesitate. "Prepare to fall back." Around them, alien forms surged, broke, reformed. Marines fired in staggered patterns, buying meters, not ground. "This place is a death spiral," Ro said. "If we stay, it swallows us." Kira nodded once. "Then we make it follow." Shaw raised his voice. "Fall back. Controlled retreat now." They moved under fire, pulling wounded, abandoning gear.
Kira dragged Cass toward the nearest helicopter as something lashed the ice behind them, carving a trench where they'd been seconds before. The last barrier went down in a storm of white. A structure rose to full height behind them. Kira's voice cut through the noise. "Colonel, now. Delta 2, full burn." The structure shattered under the blast, fragments evaporating into mist. "For now," Shaw muttered. The helicopters lifted hard, rotors screaming. Kira looked down as they rose. The Harrow field was moving. Alien geometry flowed toward the shelf edge from every direction, drawn into a single vector, toward Holt's coordinates, toward the drop. Cass exhaled, shaking. Rowe covered his hand with his own. "Harrow 4's grave," Nico said. Kira didn't look away. "It won't be a grave if we do this right." Below them, the ice cracked wider, and the thing beneath followed.
Chapter 37. The Stalker of Symmetry. The helicopters banked low over the broken plain, following the jagged spine of the Harrow shelf. The storm had thinned to a gray veil, but the wind was rising. An unsteady, pulsing rhythm made the rotor blades tremble at uneven intervals, as if the weather itself were syncing with something moving below. Kira felt it before she heard it. A second pulse beneath the first. Sub-bass, felt in the ribcage, not the ears. The alpha entity. "Colonel," she said quietly, "it's coming up." Shaw didn't ask how she knew. He wore the same hollow recognition she felt herself. Once you'd seen it change to match you, the pattern stayed. "Pilot," Shaw barked. "Angle right. Set us down near the shelf break." The helicopter dipped. Snow rattled against the hull. Volkov braced herself, eyes locked on her meter as the needle jumped so violently it blurred. "It's growing," she said, "pulling mass from the lower fractures, condensing." "Into what?" Nico asked. Volkov swallowed. "Something that doesn't need to choose targets anymore." No one answered. Below them the ice shifted. Wide plates slid against each other as cracks raced outward, sketching shapes too deliberate to be random. Cass pressed close to the window. "Those aren't new fractures," she whispered. "That's the old Harrow layout, power grid, access lines." "You're saying it's rebuilding the base?" she said. "Not rebuilding," Volkov said. "Remembering." A bright pulse erupted ahead, white, clean, rising. The pilot swore and jerked the stick. A column unfolded from the ice, not light, but geometry. Flat planes rotated in impossible alignment, always presenting a surface, never a hole. "Probe?" Rowe asked. "No, sensor. It's mapping the helicopters." "Break it," Shaw snapped. Drain fire punched through the rotating planes. The geometry shattered into shards that evaporated before they touched down. More columns rose. A ring began to form. Then everything stopped. No movement, no pulses, just pressure, thickening, compressing the air around them. Kira gripped the doorframe. "It's coordinating." Shaw exhaled slowly. This is the part Holt didn't get to record. The shelf ahead split open. Ice peeled apart, revealing a vast hollow beneath, black, domed, threaded with pale veins of light. Something moved inside it, not separate structures, one mass, constrained by space it no longer fit. "Down here," Shaw ordered. "We hold the ridge." The helicopters landed hard. Marines spilled out, forming a perimeter out of habit more than hope. Kira hit the ice, boots sliding before she caught herself. Volkov stepped forward, notebook forgotten. "Kira, look!" The alpha entity rose. Not a pillar, not a sheet, a polyform mass taller than any structure Harrow had ever housed. Thousands of rotating planes, each offset by fractions of a degree. Its surface was a library, ice fractals, grid lines, sound signatures, The ghost of Holt's diagrams burned into its geometry. Voices leaked from within, human, layered, misaligned. Do not let in. We. Kira. Nico flinched. It knows our names. No, Volkov said. It knows our patterns, every vibration we ever made. The alpha shifted, one surface aligned. It mimicked Kira's voice. Stop. Cass stumbled. Ro caught her. Kira didn't answer it. She only turned slightly. Colonel? Shaw nodded once. All units, prepare. The alpha moved. Not toward them, around them. The ground flowed, reshaping itself, lowering behind the helicopters, cutting retreat. It's boxing us, Shaw snapped. Kira felt the shift in the ice, the intent beneath it. It's closing the loop. Shaw didn't hesitate. Fire, controlled burst. Drain fire screamed against the alpha's nearest surfaces, frosted, darkened, fractured inward. For a single second it seemed to stagger. Then it reformed, flowing backward, recalculating. Volkov shouted, "It's counterphasing the drain!" Shaw swore. "All units, full charge." The response was immediate. The ground surged. Black glass geometry rolled outward like a tide. Marines went down, some frozen mid-motion, others simply erased beneath the surface. "Losses!" Shaw yelled. "Fall back to the shelf edge." Kira hauled Cass behind a tilted slab as the shockwave passed, teeth rattling in her skull. The alpha bent, an impossible fold, and projected a rotating panel outward. Images flickered across it. Echo Point, the crew, their own faces, layered and distorted. It was showing what it had taken. Kira rose into a half-crouch. "You wanted Holt's core," she said to Shaw. "This is it." He met her eyes. "Then this is where we make it heavy." The alpha leaned towards them, one vast plane aligning like a face. Kira held its gaze. "Follow us," she whispered. The ice cracked in a straight line from its base to her boots, as if drawing a path. Volkov's voice shook. "It understands intention. It's matching your vector." Shaw turned and shouted, "Retreat to the shelf! Move!" The alpha answered, not with motion, but with alignment. "We follow." The ground split wider, and the chase began.
Chapter 38. The Vault Below. They set down on what passed for stable ground. The last light bled out of the sky as the helicopters dropped into a jagged bowl of ice beneath Harold's shelf. Wind tore up the cliff face, carrying breath from a deeper dark below. The ground boomed under Kira's boots, hollow and drum-like, telling her there wasn't much between them and open water. Shaw jogged beside her, visor down. "Primary access shafts 80 meters ahead," he shouted. "Holt's deep core samples went through there. If it anchored itself anywhere, it's that shaft." "And we cut the cord," Nico said, hefting his pack of charges. Marines spread out among the leaning ice slabs, weapons low but ready. The wounded had been left with the second helicopter. Everyone else was here. Ro stayed close to Cass, one hand steady at her elbow as the ice tilted. Her arm was strapped tight, breath short but controlled. "You don't have to go down," he said. Cass snorted. "We're done splitting up." Volkov moved with her meter pinned hard into the red. "It's not tracking," she said when Kira asked. "It's waiting." The shaft came into view. Once clean and reinforced, it now gaped wide, its lip chewed jagged by subsidence. Ice along the rim was smoothed by repeated flow, something passing again and again. Nico peered down. "Feels like a throat." Shaw made the call. "North, Volkov, Reyes, Ro, one of mine. The rest hold the perimeter and the birds." Kira nodded. Smaller footprint, less pattern. They rigged the line and dropped flares. The light fell a long way before striking metal far below.
45 meters, Volkov said. Solid bottom. Kiera clipped in and went first. Inside the shaft, sound changed. The rotor thump faded until there was only breath and the faint crackle of shifting ice. Scratches marked the walls. Boots, crampons, dragged gear. Holt's team, climbing until they hadn't. She dropped the last meters onto steel. The platform below was half sunk into the ice, ringed by drilled cores like reversed stalagmites. Pale filigree creeped across the walls. Frost that wasn't frost, branching with intent. Holt gave it ladders, Volkov said softly. Every borehole. And it climbed, Rowe murmured. Shaw joined them, eyes sweeping the chamber. Direction? Volkov tapped the wall. There's a cavity behind this, bigger than the shaft, reinforced when Harrow was built. Nico was already working. Point me to the teeth. Volkov traced faint radial scars in the ice, support spiders. Cut these, and when the mass beneath shifts, the shelf fails clean. Including us, Nico said. Only if we're still here, Kiera replied. They worked fast. Charges went in at intersecting nodes. Shaw and the Marine covered the shaft as the filigree thickened, creeping toward heat and breath. Kiera moved her light across the chamber and saw the body. Dr. Samira Holt was frozen into the ice near a manual lever, locked down. Her face was calm, jaw set. She did it. She trapped it here, died holding it. Shaw dipped his head. She bought us time. Then we use it, Kiera said. The ice pulsed. Once. Slow. Inward. It feels us, Volkov said. Mass is shifting. How long? Shaw asked. Minutes, Kiera said. Enough. Nico snapped the last connection into place. We're wired. The filigree recoiled as Delta II brushed it with a low drain burst, shrinking back and leaving frosted scars. The hum in the walls tightened, finding a new note. Time, Shaw said. They moved for the rope. The shaft felt different now, air thick, motes drifting the wrong way. As they gathered at the base, the floor lorched. Mass loading, Volkov said. It's under us. Good, Nico said thinly. That's the plan, right? Rowe went first. Cass followed, efficient despite her injury. Volkov climbed next. Nico paused only long enough to meet Kiera's eyes. If it talks, don't listen. Climb. Kiera went after him. Halfway up, the walls pulsed. For a heartbeat, the ice looked like glass, patterned with vast nervous diagrams. The filigree was wiring. The hum rose in her teeth. A voice climbed with her. Kiera. It wasn't sound, it was vibration, replayed in tension. You did so well at echo. She kept climbing. Above her, Cass glanced down once. Keep moving, Cass said. You're not my favorite ghost. The rope shuddered. Something tugged experimentally at the bottom. Shaw, Kiera called. A hiss of pressure, a sharp, controlled drain burst. The tug snapped loose. Let it be angry later. Move. Hands hauled Kiera over the rim. She rolled clear as Shaw and Delta II followed, armor rimed where something had brushed them. The ice flexed, not cracking, flexing, like a lung drawing breath. Too much more mass and this won't be on our terms, Volkov said. They ran for the helicopters. Cracks arrowed out from the shaft, converging toward a point further along the shelf. Beneath their boots, the rhythm deepened. It was coming. Kiera's hand brushed the detonator. Not yet, Volkov said. We need more of it under us. How much? Nico panted. Volkov smiled without humor. Enough that it kills us if we misjudge. Ahead, the helicopters loomed against the dark. Beyond them, the shelf dropped away into blackness. The vault below was awake, and they were about to invite all of it to the edge.
Chapter 39. The Last Line. By the time they reached the shelf edge, the ice had already started to move. From above, it looked almost slow, a continent breathing out. Plates slid centimeters at a time, seams widening, pressure lines ghosting through the snow. Kira felt the truth of it in her knees and teeth. This wasn't weather, it was weight. The helicopters set down in a staggered triangle on the flattest section Holt had marked. Beyond the skids, the shelf broke away into a slate-dark ribbon of open water far below, grinding patiently at the ice face. Wind scoured the landing zone, hurling snow like blown glass. "Move," Shaw barked as the doors slammed open. "We don't get a second layout." Marines spilled out, weapons humming as they took positions. Kira pulled her helmet down, the world narrowing to HUD and breath. Volkov jumped beside her, meter pinned hard into the red, Holt's notebook crushed against her chest. Cass landed stiffly. Rose steadied her without a word. Nico came last, burdened with cables and charges. "Northeast quadrant," Shaw shouted, pointing to half-buried stakes. "Holt's mapped fault. We build the line there." Kira nodded and moved. Under everything, the wind, the surf, the scrape of ice, ran the hum, almost audible now, a chord vibrating in bone. "It's condensing mass," Volkov said, centering. "Good," said Shaw. "Give it somewhere to fall." At the first marker, Nico dropped to a scoured patch of ice, translucent and webbed with stress. "Here, chain the charges along the fracture. When they go, the shelf carves clean." Rowe passed him a block. Nico set it, adhesive hissing. Behind them, Harrow's field moved. Alien geometry poured toward the edge, not rushing, not hesitating, filling weak points like a tide. "We've run low on charges," Rose said. "Then we aim well," Nico said. Shaw walked the line, spacing his teams. Irregular fire, no rhythm. A tremor rolled through the shelf. To their right, a city block of ice sheared off and fell. The impact boomed up through the rock, spray freezing into diamond dust. "That," Nico said, quietly, but closer. "Contacts!" someone shouted. The leading edge crested the rise, dozens of forms, each wrong, moving in consensus. Hydro drains spun up. "Hold," yelled Shaw. "Make them commit." They came on, light pulsed inside them, patterns folding too fast to follow. Drain fire tore holes, carved dead zones. Some collapsed and went dark, others split and kept coming. "They're bending around the charges," Nico said. "They know the shelf," Volkov said. "They watched her plan this. Then we lie, make somewhere else look weaker." A tall lattice lurched toward a thin point where 2 Marines were down. Before Shaw could swing, Rowe stepped out and fired 3 short pulses. The hits didn't shatter it, but it stuttered it enough to draw it. "Left, 3rd string," Nico shouted. Rowe veered. Cass stayed with him, hand on his harness. The lattice followed, calculus adjusting. "Now," Volkov said. A Marine lost a brutal cone at the lattice's base. It flash-frozen and fragmented, toppling into glitter that evaporated short of the line. "That's one," Cass said, breath tight. The shelf groaned, low, massive, not a crack, a remembering of gravity. Volkov went pale. "Stress lines are overloading." "Nico, status," Shaw snapped. "3rd segment armed. When it goes, it goes." Ahead, the mass merged. Several structures flowed together into a single towering form. The light inside it was denser, faster. Wrong. "Central node," Volkov said, or close. The thing reached the lip and stopped. Even the smaller forms paused, held in some internal command. Sound rippled through the air, language adjacent. Helm speakers popped. Holt's voice looped. Down. Kira's own, stolen. Trust the rope. Others followed. Names, fragments, echoes. "Don't listen," Kira said. "It's noise." The mass tipped, not toward them, but toward the edge, testing load, calculating. "It knows," Volkov whispered. "It knows what we want." Shaw stepped forward, weapon tight. "All units," he called, voice carrying clean through the chaos. "Hold this line. No fallback. Drain it dry if you have to. This is it." Acknowledgements crackled back. Nico's denectonator blinked amber. "We wait," said Shaw, "until it commits." The hum spiked, second harmonic. Kira felt it in teeth and bone as the towering form shifted its weight. The ice sagged beneath it. "That's it," Volkov gasped. "Mark," Shaw said. Nico thumbed the denectonator. Amber flipped to white. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the shelf under the central mass turned to light.
Chapter 40. The Symmetry. The countdown died at 1. Kira hit the switch. For half a heartbeat, nothing changed. The world stayed exactly as it had been. White sky, black fissures, alien geometry rearing from the ice, while the helicopters crouched behind the ridge like animals that had wandered into the wrong place. Then the shelf moved. It wasn't an explosion. It was a sound below hearing, a deep bodily wrench as the charges lit in sequence, racing along stress lines Harrow's engineers had once drawn on paper and never truly believed they would use. The ice under their boots bucked, cracks shot outward in sharp, radiating lines. A nearby structure froze mid-motion, its inner light flaring white before blowing out into a storm of glitter the wind couldn't quite catch. "Hold!" Shaw shouted, though there was nothing to hold on to but the ridge itself. The world groaned. A fracture opened along the horizon, wide, brutal, kilometers long. Snow slid into it in slow avalanches. Lights surged up from below, the pallid glow they had chased across the continent, now shot through with darker green, the color of deep water. "Mass drop!" Volkov yelled, staring at her useless blur of her analog meter. "We've got it. It's going with the shelf." Beyond the ridge, the Harrow field began to fold. Alien structures reacted in frantic unison. Lattices thickened, spirals flattened. Long anchoring struts stabbed into the ice, only to slide, each anchor point becoming its own drifting island. The shelf did not care. A slab the size of a city block dropped half a meter in a single lurch. Fractures intersected, breaking the surface into tilted polygons, each beginning its own slow fall. Farther out, something rose higher than the rest, the core. It was too much geometry for the eye to hold, mirrored planes folding through one another, light pulsing in collapsing patterns as it tried to reconfigure faster than physics allowed. "It's off balance," Volkov breathed. "That's the main computation." The ground beneath it sagged, support struts drove outward like spider legs, but every contact point slid, every surface betraying it. For one terrible second, Kira thought it might succeed. The geometry aligned, the thing simplified, collapsing into a single perfect configuration, a faceted diamond of black ice, smooth, stable, symmetrical. Then the shelf broke properly. The horizon dipped. Ice carved along the fault line and vanished into darkness. The diamond dropped with the slab beneath it, cutting a clean path through the collapsing field. Smaller entities clung to its surface, tearing loose as the acceleration grew. There was no sound from it, only light, flaring brighter and brighter as it fell, until the chasm whited out. The impact came a breath later. A green-white flash tore up from below. The ground jumped as displaced ocean slammed into the cavity, shock waves ripping outward and shattering more ice. Steam and shattered frost roared skyward, past the ridge, past the helicopters, into the low sky. Then the light began to die. Not all at once, in patches, in flickers, like a city losing power block by block. Kiera counted without realizing she was doing it. When she reached 10 and nothing brightened again, she let out her breath. "It's sinking," Volkov said, disbelief threaded with awe. "Below the thermocline, the structure can't hold together in that much motion." "Short version?" Nico gasped. "We're drowning it." Shaw straightened slowly. "Check sectors," he ordered. "No one assumes clean." The Marines swept the field. What remained of the alien mass was already sliding, bases losing grip, fragments breaking away and vanishing into the chasm. Kiera watched one spire tilt and fall. For an instant she thought she saw a familiar shape ripple across its surface, something like a face. Then it shattered and went dark. Then there was only ice and wind and the distant sound of the ocean reclaiming what never belonged to them. The ridge steadied beneath her boots. The hum was gone. Kiera rested a gloved hand against the ice and felt nothing answer back. For the first time since the storm swallowed the world, the silence held.
Epilogue. The world didn't end with a roar. It ended in silence. Kira sat on the overturned sled outside the temporary field tent, watching the horizon thin from bruised purple to a pale, uncertain blue. Morning, or something like it. The storm had spent itself overnight. Snow lay smooth over the crater where Harrow had once stood, a single, unbroken sheet. It looked peaceful. Behind her, one of the surviving Marines coughed into a mask. Two others sat by a heater, boots thawing, faces hollow with exhaustion. A medic checked the pulse of the man they had pulled free in pieces. He was still alive. For now. Cass and Rose stood a short distance away, speaking quietly. Not the brittle closeness of crisis, but something smaller. Cass nudged his shoulder once. He smiled back, a real smile, unguarded. Nico sat cross-legged near the generator, tools spread in a careless fan. He wasn't fixing anything. Just moving, as if stopping might invite the ground to open again. Volkov paced the crater's edge, notebook open, pencil tapping a rhythm that steadied her. There was nothing left to measure. Still, she watched the ice, waiting. Kira understood. Part of her was waiting too. Weak radio static trembled in from the south. Shaw stepped out of the tent, coat pulled tight. "Amundsen's trying to raise us," he said. "No imaging yet. Just a pulse." He exhaled. "They don't know what happened." Kira nodded. "What do we tell them?" She brushed frost from her gloves. "Tell them we're alive. Tell them Echo is lost. Harrow is gone. McMurdo is gone. Tell them the anomaly isn't moving." Shaw studied her, then nodded once. "That'll do." Cass approached, her face pale but clear-eyed. "It's quiet," she said. Kira tilted her head. "You hear something?" Cass closed her eyes. Listened. Then shook her head. "No. That's what I mean." The hum was gone. The pressure. The sense of something listening back. Now there was only wind. Nico wandered over. "You think it's really gone?" Volkov answered without looking up. The mass collapsed. Geometry disrupted. If anything remains, it's deep. And slow. Nico grimaced. "Good enough." Kira stood, joint stiff, and looked across the white expanse. Then she saw it, a faint depression in the snow. Small. Circular. She crouched and brushed the surface clear. A perfect mark. As if something had tapped the ice once, gently. Kira covered it again. "Let it be over," she said. Shaw's voice carried from the tents. "Evac in 20. Birds inbound." Cass exhaled. Ro touched Kira's shoulder, grounding her, then stepped away. Kira took one last look at the crater and the fragile stillness around it. "Let's go home," she said. If home still existed. The wind rose,